We're situated in Armenia, Colombia. So it's Armenia. Quindío is the province. It's always good to kind of refresh people because Canadians really, really like to know these things. So we sometimes come prepared because they ask, like, what's the elevation? And I'm a bad Canadian now. So I'm like, I don't know. I never asked. So the population of our city in 2018, we have not had a census since. So I'm imagining it is a lot higher, but it was 295,208. I would say it's probably closer to 400,000 now, I would say, probably, all packed in the same area. And it's about 250 kilometers squared. I did not know that until I looked up these facts on Google, so and the elevation is 1,551 meters. So it's a nice climate. What would you say? What would you say?
Oh, you will love it there.
Because the average temperature is 25 to 30 degrees. And it's...
With breeze.
Yeah, with a breeze. With a nice breeze. It's nice. So not too hot, not too cold. Not rainy sometimes like this, but not as humid, so not as bad. So it's a nice place to live. But the project we run is called El Nido. So it's a pregnancy center for teenage girls. And to give you kind of the context as to why we're running this, we're not going to give you the whole background story. If you'd like to know, you can talk to us because that is a lot longer. But there's some really things for you guys that's important to know our context. So there's some statistics that I don't always just like reading, but it's important. So the statistics are basically our reality where we are in Colombia, is if you become a mother before the age of 15, by the age of 20, you have an 86% probability of having 3 children. So this is something that we're actively trying to stop. Our project only takes mothers for their first pregnancy, and we're trying to cut this off because once a teenager has 3 kids, it's sad to say, but their future is pretty much going to be in poverty, which is the profound correlation that there is between poverty and teenage pregnancy. So we're talking about 52% of them are living in absolute poverty. So the girls we work with are coming from these areas of life, from these different things. And something else that's really important is that there's absolutely no financial aid from the government. I know we all like to complain about our government. It happens everywhere. Everyone complains about the government. And I think to some degree you should always be criticizing, maybe not complaining, but criticizing and trying to make better our governments. But there is absolutely nothing for these girls. There's no child benefit. There's no money that comes from the state. The only thing that happens is that they receive a type of health care, but they're lowest on the totem pole. So for example, if they go to where they're supposed to get their birth control, if they go to get it and they get a shot every month, it's just one shot that they get, lots of times there's nothing available for them. Oh, there is if they want to pay. They have the same drug if you want to pay, but for them, there's nothing. So that's the kind of access that they have. And also there is absolutely no help or incentives in any other type of way. So for example, there's nothing in our city, and that's part of the reason we started this project, is because we went around looking, like, is there any kind of help whatsoever? And I think there's another aspect, a very aspect which we would say like a machismo, which comes out in our society, in Colombian society, which, would you like to explain a little bit more or no? I know, you're like, no, keep talking because I don't want to speak in English. That's fine. I was like, so there's a machismo aspect to the Colombian society, which is basically, it's a men-centered culture. So we were talking the other day just with Jason and Randy and talking about the fact that there really are no fathers. They did a census recently, like a survey in Medellin, one of the biggest cities, and 82% of the families there had no father. So Father's Day is coming up, and it's kind of a really, really dark joke, but it's not really celebrated. The church is empty on Mother's Day because everyone's celebrating with their mothers, but it's packed full on Father's Day because there's nothing to celebrate, which is a sad reality too that we live in. So Leidy's going to explain a little bit about the program and what we do.
Thanks. Yeah, it's sad. So our mothers end up being single mothers as well, so that makes it even harder for them. So El Nido, which means the nest, for those who... Is there anyone here who speaks Spanish? A little bit? Oh, okay. Qué chévere. So it means the nest. And we chose that name intentionally because we want this project to be a place for them to be cared, protected, and a place for them to grow. So we walk alongside these mothers for a period of 2 years, because we think that changes won't happen immediately. It needs a process. So they come every week, twice a week, or 3 times a week, and we develop a program that does an holistic approach. Sorry, my Spanish and my English. A holistic approach. So we invest in their spiritual area. We do work in the education and skills. So we open paths for opportunities for them to grow and develop. But at the same time, we work in the emotional aspect so they can heal and they can find their worth and restore themselves. That's basically what we do in a really summary way.
That was great. And so if you're interested and you want to know more, you can join our update list. There's a picture there too of the girls doing we have a little hair salon they're being taught. So there was one of the skills that they get taught as to how to cut hair. They really like to do hair, makeup in the beauty area. So that's something that they learn so they can hopefully work from their homes and receive some income. But there is a QR code. It'll take you to a weird link. Don't worry, it's not spam. You just click on the link, it'll open your email, and you can send us an email, and we'll add you to our email list. And we also brought some coffee candies. They're over by the coffee if you already had them. There's some caramels, some hard candies, and some chocolate-covered coffee beans. So please enjoy. And there's cards, too, if you want to know more about our project as well. You can take those with you. No problem. I just wanted to remember that there is some candies for you guys as well. And we will leave them here if they're not all eaten. Don't worry. We will leave them here. You can keep eating them. We're not going to... And if they're all gone, sorry you didn't get any. So, yeah, that's basically it. You can, don't worry. You can rest. Lady's going to come up and tell you a story later. But I won't make her just stand beside me the whole time. And this morning we're going to share with you. So yeah, we're going to do a small message that kind of links into something that we deal with. And we're going to be looking at Mark 2:13-17 this morning and talking about the idea of dining with the wrong crowd. So we're going to talk about the story of Matthew. This is a story that I really, really love in the Bible. It's something that always makes me think about how Jesus sees us. And that's what I hope is communicated this morning. When I was growing up, I grew up in a Christian family. I went to a Christian school until grade 8. And at grade 8, my parents decided, okay, now it's time to kind of break the little bubble. You need to go to the public school system and see what life is really like. But no, this is what happens. And also Christian school was getting very, very expensive, and that was something that was needed for my family. So it was fine. I was like, okay, my brother was already going there. And this was the era of initiation. I don't know how many of you people went through initiation. I'm pretty sure you can't do it at school anymore. I'm pretty sure there would be a lot of problems. But initiation, for those of you that don't know, you're lucky. I was like, because basically it's where the older grades, they get you to push a penny with your nose across the floor. They write "Niner" on your forehead. And so I was terrified because I was coming from a small school where I had friends and going to a new school where I knew nobody. And I really, really didn't want to go. And I really didn't want this to happen. And my brother promised me that he would not initiate me, but he's like, I can't speak for my friends. So I ate my lunch between 2 portables, hiding the whole time because the cafeteria is where it would happen. Because I did not want this to happen to me. I ended up getting initiated months later because one of my friends found me, like my brother's friends found me. He's like, I never got to do it. And I'm like, this is super embarrassing. But at least I had friends by that point. At this point, I didn't know anyone. And it wasn't until I was sitting in class beside someone and I started talking to them, because I was sociable, that I struck up a friendship with my friend. His name is Eric. We're still in contact. I actually got back in contact with him recently, which was great. And that changed things for me. Just the fact that he knew other people because he had gone to a school where a bunch of people were coming from that school into our high school. So I began to have a really, really good friend group. And it wasn't like I had to hide who I was. I could be who I was. They all knew I was a Christian. It wasn't a problem. And I won't give you my whole high school experience, but it was that moving from an outsider and feeling that like I was actually invited into something. And so that's what we're going to talk about, because that's what we see with our girls in El Nido as well. How they come in to our project kind of as outsiders with no support system, no family network, because family is your support network in Colombia. So if you don't have a family, that's actually supportive, which a lot of these girls don't, you have nothing. As I said, there's nothing. You have absolutely no support. So they begin to create their own support network with us as an organization, but also with each other, so that when they leave after the 2 years, they have friends. They have a network they can call. They can call one another. Sometimes the girls even give groceries to one another, take care of one another, because that's what they've been taught and that's what they've seen in El Nido, and that's what's important. So these girls are coming in from a place of shame, and they're leaving with a sense of dignity. And that's what we see in this story. So we'll go through a couple verses at a time. It's not a long story, but it's a beautiful one. So we'll start in Mark 2:13-14, and it says, "Then Jesus went out to the lakeshore again and taught the crowds that were coming to him. As he walked along, he saw Levi, son of Alphaeus, sitting at his tax collector's booth. 'Follow me and be my disciple,' Jesus said to him. So Levi got up and followed him." What do you know about tax collectors in this time? Anyone? Despised. Crooks. People generally don't like them. That's a good thing. Traitors, a bunch of stuff. And so this is Matthew sitting in his little tax booth. And I like to get a sense of what it was actually like. It would probably have been like a little shack with bars, lock on the side to make sure that no one's going to kill him. That's actually or steal the money. So, and he would probably be guarded with a Roman. Roman would probably be beside him because that's where the money was going. So we're talking about, I don't know if many of you know the story of Zacchaeus. I always remember the song I was taught in church, like, Zacchaeus was a wee little man. Yeah, but I don't know if they sing that still. But one of the reasons he didn't want to go into the crowd wasn't just because he was short, it's because he would probably have been killed. He was smaller, and so it would just be, he would probably be killed by people and left there, and they would get away with it because he was despised. So this is the type of person we're talking about. And Jesus comes to interrupt Matthew's story. And this is what I find so beautiful, the whole fact that he would just come and say, "Follow me." We're talking about tax collectors. They would be seen as unclean people. They were not allowed in places of worship. They were not allowed in the synagogue. Matthew would have been cut off from God completely. Because the way the tax collecting system worked was that Roman officials had set up a bidding system. So between the Romans, they would bid on sections and properties of land. So it'd be a bunch of different like collectives almost of these Roman businessmen that had the right to this area. Then they would employ Jewish people to collect the taxes from their own people. And so I know that sometimes all of us we can complain about taxes and stuff like that. But at least here in Canada, there's sometimes even a tax rebate. In Colombia, that doesn't exist. You just pay 19%, and you don't see anything. You don't see even one hole in a road I haven't seen being filled in our city. So like we always like the comment that I always make is that like yes, when people ask about taxes in Canada, I said yes, they steal. Yes, there's corruption in our government. Of course there is. Yes, they probably steal. But in Colombia, they steal right in front of your face. And you can't do anything about it. It's like here it's like, yeah, we know they're probably stealing, but sometimes it comes to light, sometimes it doesn't. But there's still some benefits. Whereas there, no, there's nothing. And this would even be worse. This is people paying taxes to be oppressed because they're completely occupied at this time. So their taxes are all going to Rome. They're not seeing any of this. The only person that's seeing something who gets a kickback because they tax a little bit higher is the tax collector. So they were hated, rightfully so. And it's like you can understand the justification as to why these people were not allowed in like places. People didn't want to associate with them. And they taxed everything. Not like exports, imports, bridges, tolls, roads. They'd probably make up taxes just so that they could have more money. So the tax collectors were quite well off. And who did they associate with? Other tax collectors, because who else wants to be with them? And so Jesus is stepping into this place of shame. And I just like this idea that he just kind of like looked at Matthew in the booth, was close enough, and just said, "Follow me." Like, what would the impact be on Matthew in this moment? because Matthew got up and left. And he wasn't just leaving a job. He was leaving security. He was walking out knowing that people might still want to kill me. And he was letting go of this life he had built on survival. He was letting go of his job security, but he wanted what Jesus had to offer, a second chance to reclaim his dignity and his purpose. And I think about his family too, because it mentions in that text, it says son of Alphaeus. And I think that that's very interesting because this would also probably restore his relationship with his father. We don't know much about his father, but the fact that it mentions that he had a son, if he himself was not a tax collector, which he wasn't, he would probably be cut off from his son or be embarrassed because it's very much a culture of shame. And so now the family has something to be proud about in Matthew. And it shows the fact that he would just get up and leave. It shows this deep connection to Jesus right away. And then also this longing for something underneath to live in a different way. So Jesus completely interrupts his story. And he's still going into unexpected places and calling people out of easy comfort, but into places where, yes, this life walking with Jesus might still be hard, but there's a purpose, there's dignity and love. So then the story progresses, and it says in Mark 2:15, later Levi invited Jesus and his disciples to his home as dinner guests, along with many tax collectors and other disreputable sinners. And I like there's this parenthesis that Mark's writing. There were many people of this kind among Jesus' followers. It was this was known. This was a known fact that Jesus was going to the disreputable people. And so Jesus comes and sits at Matthew's table. So this would have broken all the norms. A rabbi was entering a tax collector's home and sitting at his table. This was something that was traditionally where you would go as a place, as a rabbi would be invited to people's homes as a place of honor. And wherever they went to people's homes that were also people of honor. So that's why you see Jesus, he would also go to Pharisees' homes sometimes as well. But the fact that he would enter the home of a tax collector, this was a social no-no, for lack of a better word. You don't do this. And he's sitting at the house having dinner with these people. So Jesus is not waiting for Matthew to come to the temple. He's bringing the church into his home. And I really think the fact that now Matthew has this chance to be part of the kingdom. It's entering his personal space. And he doesn't want to keep it just for himself. He invited his other friends. He's happy that he's leaving this life. And he wants that opportunity for other people as well. So Jesus isn't avoiding the mess. He's sitting with it. And he's entering their world. And entering messy stories is very important work. And we sometimes forget that this is the work of the church. And so I'm going to ask my wife to come and share a story with us about the fact that sometimes we enter messy lives.
Thank you. I want to start telling you a story about a 16-year-old. She was alone. Her mom let her completely alone without food, with a little girl who was depending on her. Okay, so this is her context. She had to do things that she didn't want to do in order to survive because she has no family to call, limited support, as we mentioned. And I think a big, big pain that she was trying to do everything she could to numb, And I think when you hear those stories, you hear a story from the distance. Oh, that's a story. She's telling. But when you sit in front of a teenager, you have the opportunity to see her eyes. She's no longer just a 16-year-old. She has a name, Daniela. And now you can see Daniela, and you can see and hear her fears, her struggles, her questions. And that starts changing for you. There's no longer a story that I heard. That's a person that I met. and now I'm walking with this person. Because when we hear a story from the distance, it's easier to see the wrong choices that this person was making, and it's hard to see the young girl who was trying to do everything she could in order to survive. I forgot to mention that she was malnourished. She was living with rats, and I'm not telling the rats on the ceiling. She could see them in her kitchen walking. That was her situation. And then she came to El Nido. We welcomed her. We fed her. We cared for her. We talk about treating people with dignity. And we forget that treating people with dignity is just simple acts, like inviting them for a meal. Listen to them. She needed that. She needed someone who would see her as the way she was. And it's hard to see those situations. It's hard not to, feel the heaviness. But at the same time, during our process, we have been able to understand what God wants us to do through El Nido and use it as a place to receive people just as they are. They don't need to clean up themselves to be welcome. Just as you are, just as they are, God sees them and invites them to this place like El Nido to take care of them. And from that place of care, she started making different decisions. She stopped using drugs. She finished high school. And now she's looking for a job to take care of her daughter. And that's beautiful. It's beautiful to see the practical help is not separate from the gospel. Sometimes it's the gospel made visible to these people who struggle. Yesterday I was in the river. I'm still amazed that was a river. I was like, this is the ocean. I was like, no, it's a river. And I was like, what? We don't have that kind of rivers back at home. This is a massive thing. And it was really wavy, It was like a lot of wind and stuff like that. And I think sometimes those girls, and even us, we feel like when we're trying to catch our breath, you barely can do it after another wave hits and other thing comes and another thing comes. And we need to remember that the gospel is not about avoiding brokenness. It's about God entering it in those lives that need it. And not just our girls, our own lives as well.
So Jesus honored the dignity of every single person, regardless of their history or status. And so the impact on Matthew, probably with Jesus sitting at the table, is not saying, I accept what you're doing. I'm down with tax collectors. This is great. No. He's saying, I'm calling you to repentance through love. I'm sitting here listening to you, and my presence is at your table regardless of who you are and what you're doing. And so this idea, like just days earlier, I'm pretty sure Matthew never imagined he would be hosting a rabbi in his home. Probably didn't think that was ever going to be a possibility for him. And now he's been able to open his home as a bridge for outsiders. So his past didn't disqualify him, and it became the stage upon which a big amount of grace was shown. And so Jesus doesn't want to only show up in our places of worship. He wants to be present in our homes. And the story goes on. It's like, what is going to happen when a rabbi is visiting the home of a tax collector? Everyone's going to know. It's going to go around. Like whispers everywhere, like, oh, look, I heard Jesus is going here. And so the story continues, and it says, but when the teachers of religious law, who were Pharisees, saw him eating with tax collectors and other sinners, they asked his disciples, why does he eat with such scum? That's a harsh word. Scum. When Jesus heard this, he told them, healthy people don't need a doctor. sick people do. I have not come to call those who think they are righteous, but those who know they are sinners. So I love Jesus' response because in his response, he's defending the people he's sitting with. He's standing up for them. And he's being bold and showing love to them at the same time. But bold because he's right in front of the people that are in charge of the law. And so he says to them, he says like, these are people, he says like the righteous people that just think that they're okay. So he's basically accusing them. They're saying like, you might think you're okay, but you're not. And so just in this small act, I can just imagine the wounds that are being healed in those people, including Matthew's heart. Saying like, I chose to follow him, and look, he's standing up for me now. Jesus didn't wait for Matthew to respond or anyone to say like, oh, we're not scum. Jesus stood up and said, no. You can't talk like that. And so he doesn't ignore Matthew's wounds, but he names them with compassion because he refers to them as sick. So there is the acknowledgement, but there's this compassion behind it. And he's naming himself as the doctor that's going to help to fix, which is the exact reason he came. So before this, Matthew had been treated like a disease. If we're talking about the doctor, I was like, he had been treated like a disease. And now he's treated like a patient worthy of care. And this is something that's very interesting because when you read Matthew's gospel, and I would encourage you to go and read Matthew's gospel through this light of who Matthew was and who he became and how he writes about the outsiders, you'll start to notice that there's a compassion, a love that he has for the outcasts. And the way he writes about them never paints them in a negative light. And this is probably because he remembers that when other people were calling him all kinds of names, Jesus said, follow him, and he defended them when they were called scum. This is a hard reality, and this is something that once you start to know someone and you see their heart, and even when you invite them into your life, like if someone says a negative comment about our girls, like Lady will go off the rails probably a bit. I was like, and me too. It's like, whoa, wait a second. Like, you don't know the context they live in. Because sometimes people have made comments and I'm like, oh, but like, what about the way that they dress? Like, you have no idea what context they live in. So it's really easy to make these comments when we really, really, really don't know. And there's a quote I love from Tim Keller. It actually is from his book about encounters with Jesus. And it says, the founders of every other major religion said, I'm a prophet who shows you how to find God. But Jesus taught, I'm God, come to find you. And we see this in the story of Matthew. Jesus went and searched him out. And we see this in our stories too. I'm sure many of you might have testimonies where you felt like Jesus came and found me. Maybe he used a person. But there is that sense that Jesus came to find us. And so we want to show you a small video before we wrap up. There's a small video that really, really shows how the girls come in and how they leave our program. All of the words from the video are taken from a speech that they made at graduation. So it's their words translated in English for you guys, but it's directly from their words. So we'll just watch that and then I will finish.
When our worlds changed with the news of our pregnancies, we felt alone, afraid, and without a clear direction. When we arrived at Nido, we did not realize that we were hiding behind our fears, our exhaustion, and our silence. But you opened your doors to us, and more importantly, your arms and your hearts. Here, among you, we found a place where we could finally let go of the weight we've been carrying without even realizing it. We learned that we were not alone. We learned that our tears were not a sign of weakness, but a call to heal. Nido was not just a place where we received help. We reached out our hands to formed an invisible network woven together with pain, love, resilience, and hope. Thank you for every hug that came without being asked for every shared tear that became less heavy, for every laugh that appeared like a miracle after a difficult day. Thanks to your team, we learned that being mothers is not a limitation but a strength. We are stronger, more aware, more filled with love, and more prepared for life. We thank God because without Him, we truly would not have been so fortunate to find not only a group like this, but also a nest where we found a great family. Thank you for seeing in us something that sometimes even we did not know we had. We will never forget the love and support found at Nido. It was not just a place where we received help, it became our school of life, our greatest support. Today our children and us have a brighter future, and that is thanks to the seed of hope you planted. Thank you for helping us build wings, for teaching us that even broken wings can grow again when they are cared for in a safe place. With hearts beating stronger than ever, the mothers of Nido.
Oh, lady's crying now. I'm going to cry now. But this is the beautiful part of when you just bring the gospel in a very practical way, showing love and telling them that this is part of the reason we're doing this. It's like God put this on our heart. This program was designed by Him for you. We're not doing this because we're great people. We're doing this because God found us, changed us, saw us, and called us to follow Him. And it's this idea that no one is beyond the reach of Jesus' call, and our homes can become places of mission. So we always like to end with a challenge for people too, so that's something that you guys can take with you throughout the week and really ponder on this. So throughout this week, I would challenge you all to think about these questions. And if you have encountered Jesus, how has your life changed? To really think about how you were before and after, because there should be a before and after. And if you have not yet encountered Jesus, if you're sitting here today and you're still looking and you're still searching and you don't know, are you willing to invite Him into your life and to your table? Because He is standing knocking. He is looking and saying, follow me. But you need to answer. And the third one would be, in what ways can your story and your table become a place where others encounter Jesus? We find that inviting people into your home, or even here and breaking bread with them, eating around a table. We eat with our girls a lot of the time. And there's something spiritual that comes out. People start sharing their lives around a table. They feel comfortable. And it's this gift of food that's been given to them, but then it's okay. We feel like we can actually talk. And your homes can become places. This space can become a place where you share food with people. Not just giving people food, but you share food with people and you get to know who they are. So this is the thing about the gospel, because there's high ideals in the gospel, but also an all-encompassing grace. And sometimes as the church, we tend to lean either one way or the other. Either we lower our ideals and we soften Jesus' words so that they fit our preferences, and so it's acceptable for other people, or we reduce grace and we treat certain sins as worse than others. We can't do that. We need to be a community that remains faithful to both the high ideals of the kingdom and to the infinite grace that Jesus offers us. Because this is the story of Matthew. Jesus didn't come to just save Matthew from something. He saved him for something. There was a purpose, a dignity that was restored, and who Matthew was to become. And that's not just true for Matthew, that's true for all of us as well. Jesus came to restore us, to save us for something, that we can go out, that we can share His love with others, because we know that what we have found is the most precious gift. And so we need to treat it like that gift. So let's pray this morning to finish. Father, thank you that you came to find us, that you sent your Son to come find us on this earth and to show us how to live with dignity and with love and with compassion and how to share that with others. God, I just want to specifically ask for this community this morning that you would spread a sense of infinite grace and infinite love and compassion in this community as they look to see how they can affect others, how they can love one another here and outside these walls. I ask that you would bind them together so that nothing can break them as a community. That yes, differences of opinion will arise and different things may happen, but first and foremost, they will look at each other with love. God, thank you for them. Thank you for the love that they've shown us, for the support that they've shown us. And I ask that you would just strengthen them. Thank you that you came to find us. Thank you that you love us so much. Thank you for just the fact that looking at Matthew changed his life, and we know you're looking at us. So, Father, forgive us for the things that are in our lives that we need to be forgiven for, and restore us so that we too can serve you to the best of our abilities. Thank you that we have that opportunity day after day after day, that we can just come and fall at your feet and know that you are a loving Father watching us. So God, thank you. Amen.